Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. Today we have a special guest, Aphiel Levi, host of the Forefront Radio.
Justice for you and me. Justice for Mike Brown.
No justice, no peace.
After the death that shook the entire country, I decided to step up as a community activist and create a global podcast, Woke by Accident. Here, I amplify compelling news stories and matters impacting African Americans and their communities. My goal is to give a voice to the voiceless and have the difficult conversations needed to advance relations and matters of race. Tune in to Woke by Accident podcast. I am your host, Jen, and it is streaming on all of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as our website, www.wokebyaccident.net. Thank you for listening and take care. Guys, welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. Today we have a special guest, Aphiel Levi, entrepreneur and host of the Forefront Radio, which is available on all streaming platforms, including YouTube. Levi returns to take part in the conversation and to review some important news stories with me. Welcome, Levi.
Thank you for having me on the show. I truly appreciate it. That episode intro is so dope. I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So I don't know if you've seen that yet. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And you're in it. Yeah. So we wanted to bring Levi on for the conversation, wanted to talk about what's going on in the news with the Buffalo shooting and the Uvalde shooting. You may be familiar with the Buffalo shooting. A gunman, Payton Gendron, who was 18, entered the Tops grocery store and committed a gruesome act and ended the lives of 10 African Americans. 3 are injured, and he has been charged. He was charged on May 19th, and the charge is, first-degree murder. And this the article reports that the first-degree indictment covers all 10 deaths. And so this was handed out on May 19th. It's interesting that he just had the one charge, though. Want to bring Levi into the conversation about his charge.
Yeah, I think this whole entire situation of him just being charged only one charge for the deaths of 10 people is completely egregious. The reason why I say that is if you pop bubblegum in the wrong place or jump over like turnstiles in a New York subway system, you're going to get charged with multiple different things. This guy literally committed an act of domestic terrorism in the United States of America, and no hate crime bill. No hate crime charge, no terroristic threat charge. Neo-Nazi. He has ties to these things.
Right. You would think we'd at least see a charge in reference to the individuals who were wounded. So not even an assault charge for those, which is odd.
Definitely. And he should be at least charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, carrying a assault rifle on public property, trespassing. They should be throwing the book at this guy. Okay, he should have a library of charges on him for this act, because he didn't do something that just impacted one people. It impacted the entire nation. People are crying out like, hey, what is going on here? Why are we in a society where these terrorists, and you got to call it what it is, these domestic terrorists committing violent
Mhm.
acts towards people for no reason, just because of their inner hatred in them. And we've covered the hatred that they've had in their spirit for a long period of time. And I think the article that we're going over from the Christian Monitor is really significant because it shows you that there's fluff pieces too as it relates to this. Like the media coverage of this thing is bananas and insane. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. It's the media coverage is really interesting depending on where you hear it from. He may be described as a loner and things like that, and then rather than this violent person who clearly is disturbed. The language is really interesting depending on. Well, actually, all of the media is pretty much reporting. Or describing him in that manner, that he's this loner or lone wolf is kind of the terminology being used in reference to him.
And the funny thing about it, I'm glad that you mentioned that because most of these individuals are not loners. They run in packs. Wolves do not operate by themselves. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. Most wolves, if you look
Mhm.
biologically, run in packs. They work as a unit. So this whole lone wolf syndrome is all lies. It's all like,
Mhm.
because think about it. This guy live streamed the event. So my question is, if he live streamed it, who are his audience? Who's watching this? Who is he promoting this to? Because that if you live stream it, it's an advertisement. It's not something that is just something you do casually as a, because most people when they live stream, it's either for like vlogging, travel or news or whatever the case may be. You see what I'm saying? But for them to do
Right.
that for this, yeah, it's egregious, completely egregious.
Right. He made a special point to invite these certain individuals into this live stream before the attack. And, that was important to him to build this community or have this audience, if you will. And, apparently he had studied the other mass shootings. So he had been in community with other like minded individuals, apparently.
Yeah, not only that, but it was like they were best friends. Best
Okay.
friends, okay? Because if I'm sending you video, this is like, think of it like a family circle, right? Where you have a group of individuals that have the same ideology, the same thought process, and they're sharing it amongst themselves. Like, hey, bro, I got a Twitch video. They had memes that were having racist rhetorics in the back channels of what they used on like Discord servers, 4chan, and some of these other white supremacist websites that they get on. Okay, they constantly
Yeah.
have words and rhetorics, and they joke around about homicide towards innocent people. And it's no different than the Dylan Roof situation. It's no different
Mhm.
than the who was that other guy that went and killed a bunch of people? 75 people killed in Las Vegas, right? The Las Vegas
Yeah.
shooter, right?
Mhm.
All these stories we have to go back and think, wait, what group of people are constantly committing these acts? It's showing enough ain't black folks, I'll tell you that.
Well, and so that's kind of leads us to his motivation, so he's talking with people who have the same ideology, and he's sharing his writings, which have were motivated by racist rhetoric and that theory. Let's talk about that for a bit, that replacement theory. I think you found a piece
Yeah,
on that.
definitely. If I can, what
Mhm.
I'll do is share my screen and we'll go over that article briefly. Let me see, share screen, uh, entire screen. Let's see, share system audio. Let's go to, all right, here we go. So I like the title of this. Replacement theory isn't new, right? Replacement theory isn't new. 3 things to know about how this fringe conspiracy has become mainstream. The recent grocery store mass shooting in Buffalo, New York is placing a spotlight on white supremacy. Placing a spotlight on white supremacy. Why is this important? Because a lot of times people think that we live in an age of color blindness, that racism is over. We had a black president. Now we got a female VP. We got a female black, judge. All these different things that people say to give the illusion that we're under a system that is not influenced by white supremacy. But this mass shooting shows, it gives a huge spotlight that this thing still exists. So then it says, 18-year-old Payton Gendron drove 3 hours. 3 hours. Okay? So the first hour should have told you, maybe I should turn around. The second hour should have told you, maybe I should turn around. The third hour, he was committed to this thing. Once you get to, people have such a low, how can I describe, a low attention span, a short attention span, that they can't even stand sitting in a movie theater for longer than an hour and a half. So 3 hours sitting in the car? So this dude was listening to music, psyching himself up. He was thinking what to do, what situations could occur, how to react if he met up some resistance. This was carefully thought through. Okay, then it says he went from Conklin to the Tops grocery store on May the 20th. So with that being said, Memorial Day is coming up. I want to, memorialize all the victims that have been impacted. He literally killed 10 people, but these 10 people have fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, all interrelated with them. And this guy used racist rhetorics on his weapon. He literally wrote Nigger on his assault rifle. And on the back of the assault rifle, he wrote, "Here's your reparations." So is white supremacy over? Definitely not. He knows of the social issues that we're going through, and he gives a bunch of bullets to people to say, this is your reparations. Come on. If you don't see that you have an enemy, folks, then you need to wake up. Woke by accident. We need to wake up. You see what I'm saying? So it says he had racist expletives that he used. You see what I'm saying? And he had a 180-page manifesto. So hold on. Consider that for a second, Jen. He had a 180-page manifesto. Most students that are in high school, most high school students get agitated when you tell them to write a 10 to 12-page term paper. Okay, so for this guy to write 180 pages, that means his heart was committed to this thing, his mind and soul. He had this thought process since the age of 14 and onward. So my question for the listener is, who did he get this from? Where did this replacement thought come from? And the article explains. Watch this. It says, his 180-page online manifesto also repeated key elements of replacement theory. This theory, they call it a conspiracy theory, but I think it's a legitimate theory that they have in their mind, with roots in French nationalism of the 20th century, that's dealing with like the Jacobins and the French Revolution and stuff, falsely warns that Western elites and Jews are bringing immigrants into a country to replace white people. Now consider this thing. This same rhetoric is used by Republican politicians and commentators, using this as coded language. They use this language all the time. You got news commentators like Tucker Carlson on the Fox News, right? He uses that rhetoric, replacement, all the time, right? We're not going to be replaced by immigrants. We're not going to be replaced by other people. We have to fight for states' rights. We have to fight. That's the rhetoric they use. We have to fight for states' rights when it comes to immigration, when it comes to, that's how they speak. So, for example, Missouri Senate candidate Eric Schmidt, the state attorney general, said in May that Democrats are fundamentally trying to change this country. Fundamentally, that means in their core, they're trying to change this country through illegal immigration. So now, I have a question for you, Jen. How was America established?
With immigrants coming
Ding, 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 ding,
over
ding, ding.
to
So
this
the illegal
country and
immigrants
right,
was definitely not the Native Americans and the Hispanics. They were here first. So the illegal
right.
immigrants were the Caucasians, the Dutch, the Polish, the Scottish, the British, the French, the Spanish that came over here and committed acts of genocide in order to obtain this land. Did they vote for it? No. They had 400 treaties that they had with the native indigenous populations, and they broke them all. So, as scholars of white supremacy, it's sad that you have to study this thing. As scholars of white supremacy, white nationalism, and extremism, we think it's important to understand what replacement theory means and how it shapes various white supremacy conspiracies, which motivate violent extremism. There we go. That's the point that I wanted right there. This thing motivates. This thought process is their modus operandi. This is how they deal with matters of war. You see, so I'll stop sharing the article. We could share it later on in the description for the audience if they desire to do so. But this is a prime example of this. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. That definitely captures the motivation for his attack. Let's see.
And the interesting thing about it, the scriptures even talks about how we as a nation of people should understand how to deal with those that don't have our best interests at heart. Okay, they told us that Christopher Columbus discovered this place. That was a lie. They told us that this place was created around 1776. That was a lie. They were here already since the 1400s, and they enslaved us since the 1400s with the Hispanic and Latino and Native indigenous populations, and also African Americans and people of the Black diaspora during the 1600s and the 1619. So was America founded in 1776? It wasn't. There was already a system of government in place here prior to it establishing itself as the United States of America. So what does the Bible say about our enemy? What does the Bible say about those that don't have our best interests at heart? In the book of Deuteronomy, I believe it's chapter 33, I have a vital verse that kind of relates to this Buffalo situation. It's Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 29. And it reads, 33:29. Here we go. Sorry about that. Israel, I'm going to read verse 28 and then I'll read verse 29. It says, verse 28, Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. So, God wants us as a nation of people to live alone, away from these white supremacists. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon a land of corn and wine. Also his heavens shall drop down as dew. So the Most High originally blessed us prior to us leaving out of the nation of Israel and fleeing into West Africa due to Roman persecution. We lived in a land that flowed with corn and wine, with blessings of safety alone, away from white supremacy, away from the Edomites, away from the Moabites and all these other nations. Verse 29 relates to this topic now. How happy art thou, O Israel? Who is like unto thee? There's no other nation as great as us. O people saved by the Lord, the shield of thy help. who is the sword of thy excellency. So the Bible is stating that God himself will be the sword of our excellence. He will be our defense in times of trouble. And then it says, and thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. So it's showing you that these individuals that try to hide and masquerade, but behind some of the rhetoric that they say, we're going to find them to be liars. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And so we'll talk about the shooting, which occurred in Uvalde. And this is the horrible shooting that we've all heard about that occurred at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, which claimed the lives of 19 children and 2 adults. The gunman, um, Salvador Ramos was identified as the gunman who stormed into Robb Elementary on Tuesday this past week with a rifle and tactical vest. He barricaded himself in the adjoining classrooms of the children and opened fire. And so, to discuss this matter, it looks like we're getting some updates as far as how he entered, because there was a resource officer, but it looks like the protocol may not have been followed. So wanted to discuss that and have a conversation about, just in general, how we can keep kids safe going forward in school
I
with you
think with
there.
the public education system, they've done a piss poor job of really addressing some of our concerns as parents, as fellow citizens in all communities, not just in the African American community, but also all throughout the United States. Mass shootings from the Sandy Hook situation to other well-known events have been running rampant. And the fact that they are now targeting children, because think about it, in the first instance of the Buffalo shooting, that was targeted towards some of the elderly. And then with this
Yes.
situation, it's targeting the young. So both young and old are not exempt from the violence and the vitriol and the hatred that many people have within themselves. So the ideology of white supremacy has to be addressed because it's impacting not only their population, but other populations as well, where some may seek to have some sort of retaliatory type of sentiments. Who knows what was in the thought process of this young man that ended up going into this school? He could have been doing this as a retaliative measure towards an individual or towards a particular group. We don't know. But what's commonly
Right.
understood is that violence is not the answer. Violence is definitely not
Yes.
the answer. I recommend, as far as the school system, as a solution, that, because I know there's other solutions, but I would say homeschooling your children, because the pandemic was primarily one of the key things that led to a lot of people doing online and distance learning. It kind of left
Mhm.
from the college route, to and universities, to more high schools, middle schools, elementary schools now doing the online learning. So if we could get a group of teachers to build associations, to build different
Mhm.
groups and different thought processes where they were able to do online classes and do homeschooling, I think that would benefit our community tremendously. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I actually was in a group on the Clubhouse app. Just several conversations going on discussing the matter. A lot of parents expressing concerns. A lot of teachers expressing concerns, and the thought of homeschooling did come up. And it seems like that, definitely could be a solution. And even within small groups, if not on a one-on-one, because a lot of parents have to work during those primary hours, but it seems like it certainly could work in a small group type of setting, and it may be a solution because what was it, 500 kids in the school and just one resource officer to protect the whole school and a door unlocked where he was just able to just walk right on in. It's a very troubling thought, and that this could happen to other schools across the country. It's just really troubling to think of that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Think about it. Somebody with a pistol or assault rifle can waltz into a public area. And, when I grew up in Miami, I knew that there were a lot of people in places like New York that had metal detectors and police guards. And these were like middle schools and high schools that had these things. And now, what are people going to do? Are they going to start considering doing this also in elementary schools to put police guards and sentries and metal detectors and all these different things? Like, homeschool your kids, folks. Like, we need to stop relying on this system to try to protect us, because it's gotten to the point where why even try to reason for them to pass laws, for them to do long debates and discussion? Pull your kids out of, they're already getting a lot of lies anyways. There's books out there called Lies My Teacher Taught Me in School and stuff like that. So we should educate our kids, and we should take on more, I'm talking about all American citizens, need to take a more active role in the education process of their students, what they want them to learn, what they don't want them to learn, what they can acquire to gain knowledge and insight. Consider the fact that most of these schools don't even teach kids how to budget a bank account. All right. Is that vital life resources that they need to learn? Yeah. Some of them don't know about stocks and bonds. Some of them don't know about any type of resources of investments, mortgages. They're not taught this in elementary school. So, don't get me wrong, basic math and basic sciences and English and history is important. But if it's filled with white supremacist rhetoric and lies and BS, how can you expect, like, even, vast civil rights leaders said, how can you expect those that did not treat you right to teach you right? Especially your kids. So it doesn't make sense for me to have another nation of people who's never had our best interests at heart. And due to this Buffalo shooting, you see it time and time again. It's a spotlight on white supremacy. It's a spotlight on the hatred and the vitriol in this place. There will be no peace. And Christ didn't come to send peace. Christ came to send division. Meaning what? He wanted us initially to separate from these nations and build our own nation, okay? And that's what it is. It is what it is. But some people will accept it or some people won't, There was something of the Buffalo incident that I found quite remarkable that I wanted to touch on as it relates to this topic. When you go back and read some of the articles that are mentioned in regards to this situation, there was an article by Christian Monitor that I wanted to take note of, which was really interesting to me. It said something about the radicalization online, right? It said, in the waning days of Mr. Gendron's COVID-altered senior year at Susquehanna Valley High School, he logged on to a virtual learning program in economics class that asked, what do you plan to do when you retire? Now, his response, and for the sake of YouTube, I'll make sure I politically correct this statement. His response in his typing was, delete people and delete myself. That was his response. So there wasn't people going around and saying, hey, this kid needs to be looked at. They need to check this man out. He literally typed that. That's not something you joke about. Because now he acted upon that joke. Then it says, despite his protests that it was all a joke, Gendron, who had long been viewed by classmates as a loner with good grades, was questioned by state police over the possible threat and then taken into custody and to a hospital for psychiatric evaluation under a state mental health law. So why did he not stay in psychiatric eval? Why did he not stay in that facility? It just was like, oh, okay, we're just going to take a look at you and talk about it. Because look at this. The article says, but a day and a half later, a day and a half, not a week, not a month, okay, he was released. So now consider this. When it comes to African Americans in the prison industrial complex, right? Whenever an African American or Latino is harassed, if you say anything in regards to any type of threat, whether it's like I saw people that told me that when they got locked up in jail, there was a poster saying that if they made a single threat about COVID-19, about coughing on somebody, that they would be detained for 30 days.
Oh, wow.
Okay? 30 days. Yeah. This guy, grown 18-year-old man, says he wanted to delete people and himself, and they held him for a day and a half. Now, was that sufficient time for us to evaluate an individual? A minimum should have been 3 weeks, a month, maybe 30 days, maybe 90 days eval, something where they can consistently monitor him, especially when it's well known that these individuals create these egregious acts. Not one or two people that they're mad at. They killed well over dozens of people. That's what they do. So then what I found interesting about this was this. When you read that Christian Monitor article, it touches on the relatives, right? And this is going into some of the political motivations behind media. At one point last winter, Gendron's mother called a friend's mother with a request. Please have Matthew call Payton because he had no friends and needed to talk. The two boys ended up going to flea markets together, watching YouTube videos together, and shooting guns on nearby state land over the next few months. So hold up, wait a minute. So that shows you that this whole lone wolf syndrome is BS. Because the two boys are hanging out, going to flea markets, watching YouTube videos, shooting guns. 18-year-old children, right? 18-year-old men. Because once you turn 18, technically you're an adult, right? Going and shooting guns. What were they talking about? What conversations were they having? What type of thoughts were running through their minds? They run in groups. His friend said that he had never heard his friend talk of anything violent. BS. BS. So you mean to tell me this is your best friend, your buddies, your pals. You didn't have jokes about white supremacist rhetoric? Your ideologies of replacement thought didn't come to mind? I don't know. I didn't think he was violent. He seemed cool to me while we were shooting guns.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up. So they're clearly protecting him. And definitely with that threat he made during senior year, they saw how close he was to graduation. They wanted to make sure he graduated, and they did everything they could to make sure he did. And so if they had, his parents might have went down there carrying on, he's got, and they made sure he graduated. So
remember the analogy I gave a while ago on a previous episode when I was talking about the snake, and I was saying how most snakes will tell you, "Oh, my baby snake is so good. He's such a good." It's still a snake, though. It's still a snake. True. Even if the snake sheds its skin and says, "No, I never thought that he could be violent. I mean, we hang out all the time. We just joke around about black folks all the time, and we never would never do anything like that." Cap.
Right.
Somebody lying. Somebody lying.
It's like that. Yeah, that thought has not even I guess you just have to take it at, take it at the value of what the person said. But like you said, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up.
Remember what we just read in the Bible. Thy enemies shall be found liars. That's what the Bible says. That's what the Bible says. Your enemies are going to be found liars. And even in this article, This article from the Christian Monitor is a fluff piece. It's a fluff piece. Like, here's an example of such. It says, the two boys ended up going to flea markets together, watching YouTube videos, shooting guns at a nearby state land over the next few months. His friend said that he had never heard his friend talk of anything violent. So you're telling me you're shooting guns for a couple of months and not one thought said to you, hey, when he's thinking of firing a firearm, he's thinking of black people. Never once? Not one single time? Cap. Here's another example. Some neighbors had a similar view. You see that? Some neighbors had a similar view. So who is this? Who's stating this? Is it the news station that's stating this? Or is it the actual people stating this? This is the news station now that's saying this, not the people. It says some neighbors.
Right.
Who are the neighbors? They ain't black folks. Who are the neighbors? They ain't black folks. They ain't Hispanics. They ain't Chinese. Some neighbors had a similar view, seeing the family as happy and prosperous, with both Paul Gendron and his wife, Pamela, holding stable jobs as civil engineers with the New York State Department of Transportation, earning over $200K combined according to online records. So my question is, why in this article, when they're talking about a mass shooting, when they're talking about a violent act committed by a criminal, by a thug, by a domestic terrorist, there's no mention of the victims. There's no mention of the motivations behind, like this article has no mention of the replacement theory thought process that we read in the other article, right? No mention of condolences to the victims that were impacted by this egregious act. What kind of compensation can be provided to these families, either towards funeral expenses, towards family life plans, towards homes now that can't be paid for because fathers are gone, towards the police officer that was assassinated? Where's Blue Lives Matter? Where's Blue Lives Matter now? Right? So these things show you not only the thought process behind white supremacists, but also the ideologies behind the media that cover up these things.
Right. It's like, who's on the board or something? Like something's going on here. Yeah.
So that shows you that a lot of people know what's going on. They know that they have a vitriol towards us. They know this. It's not hidden. It's not in a secret bunker somewhere where you have to have, DNA code to figure out what's going on. You see it in your face. This is directly God showing you who the people of the wicked are. They have wickedness in their social media. They have wickedness in their news stations, their senators, their politicians, their judges, their police officers. Everyone says it's systemic, right? And this is the rhetoric I always hear. They never say it's a group of people. They never say, oh no, it's just a system. It's just, no, it's the people that are doing this. When are white people stand against white people to say, I don't, they have pockets here and there, a few occasions come to, different events, Black Lives Matter, or whatever. But a vast majority, are they going over there and saying, you're creating another civil war for yourself? You're making it bad for white people. They're not doing that.
Right.
They're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That other kid in Uvalde, right? They knew he was a Hispanic kid. They busted in the door and they gunned him down. They didn't ask him, hey, could you put your weapons down so we could talk about it? Because he had a Hispanic name, right? Could you put your guns down so we could talk about it? But this other guy, let's give him a sandwich like we did, what's this dude, Dylan Roof. Let's take him out for a meal. Hey, listen, Payton, I understand your frustration, bro. I understand you're mad. It's okay. Calm down, bro. Calm down. Put the weapon down. and we can talk about this, okay? You don't have to off yourself. We'll talk about this. Did the black people treat you bad? What happened? Talk to me. This is what they do. You're trying to reason with a terrorist.
Yeah.
You didn't shoot him down. You called him over and you had a discussion with him. You safely put him in handcuffs. You arrested him and gently placed a mask over his face to protect him from COVID. Are you kidding me? Well, white supremacy doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
And you have to
Yeah.
speak like that because this gives the thought process for those that are critical thinkers to say, hey, there's something wrong with America, not the system, not an individual, the news, the media, how they portray the story. But guess what? I like the New York Times because the New York Times actually said it like it is. I want to kind of touch on the New York Times if we may.
Okay.
All right, so the New York Times article about the Buffalo situation said this, right? It says, how Buffalo suspects' racist writings reveal links to other attacks filled with hate. The screed describes a mass shooting at a grocery store and connects it with a belief shared by gunmen in previous massacres. So when it's one person that does a situation, you could say, oh, it's a one-off. When it's two people that do this situation, you could say, oh, maybe one or two. But over the course of years, when you see hundreds, tens of or dozens of people that have the same demographic committing the same acts of violence, but yet unarmed black people, Sandra Bland, George Floyd, Ayanna, the young lady Ayanna, I can't remember her last name, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, who said he had a firearm but still got gunned down, but it defies reason for any critical thinker. There is something going on where they feel like they have the right in their Second Amendment to gun down people that don't look like them. Fact, not opinion, fact. Now consider this. The parking lot outside of Tops Market in Buffalo was blocked off on Sunday as the police investigated the scene where 10 people were killed. The parking lot outside of Tops Market in Buffalo was blocked off on Sunday as the police investigated this thing, and 10 people were killed, according to the credit by Joshua Rashad McFadden for the New York Times. Now, this article by Alan Furr says this: in an online screen full of neo-Nazi references. Let me share the article so that way folks can actually read along with me. Let me share my screen. Share system audio. Let's see here. There we go. All right, screen share. Here we go. Now we're sharing the screen. Can you see it with me? All right. It says right here. It says, in an online screen full of neo-Nazi references, Neo-Nazis are those that hate blacks, those that hate Jews. The reason why is because they know, historically speaking, that the Jews were black. And the religion of those that participate in Judaism took on an African Hebraic religion. So they dislike anything that has to do with black culture, black people, black images, anything that is positive, they hate it with a passion. The 18-year-old New Yorker accused of going on the shooting spree this weekend at Buffalo supermarket connected himself to a slurry of hateful ideologies. He also claimed allegiance to a group. You see that? To a group across 6 countries. He claimed allegiance. That means it's not a lone wolf like the news media is saying.
Right.
A group of violent killers across 6 countries responsible for racist murders reaching as far back as a decade. In essence, his 100-page post wanted to, quote, spread awareness that in the writer's baseless view, immigrants, aka Black people, immigrants, aka Hispanic people, immigrants, aka Chinese people, didn't Chinese people get impacted in California too? You got Chinese folks that's impacted by white supremacy. Immigrants to the United States were supplanting the white population and to encourage further attacks in the process to bid in starting a race war. That's what they want to do.
Wow.
So now experts in far-right extremism have often cautioned that giving too much public attention to the writings like the one produced by the suspect Payton Gendron helps to accomplish their stated aims of promoting vile and dangerous ideas and promoting violence. All cap. Here's why I say that. When a Muslim commits an act of violence, they don't say that's a lone wolf. They say because of the religious practices of his group, he is a part of a group that has extremist tendencies. That's what they say, right? When it comes to Black people, even though Black people are well known to be peaceable, to be loving, to be people that care for others, we treat other people better than we treat ourselves. There's more Black people killing Black people than retaliation for slavery and oppression. But yet, if one Black individual says or does something out of character, they'll say, let's investigate their church, let's investigate what school they went to, let's investigate what people he hangs around, because they work as a group. But when it comes to good old friendly neighborhood Payton Gendron, when it comes to Spider-Man and Batman, no, they're the hero. Listen to me, folks. In this script, the villain is the good guy. Black folks, Hispanic folks, they're the good guys. And the good guy, your Spider-Man, your Batman, is actually the bad guy. This is the real reality of society. Why? Because according to this article that we're reading, there's a cover-up. There's a cover-up. It says, don't allow them to accomplish their goal by promoting their vile and dangerous ideas. Don't expose white supremacy. Don't tell them that we hate Black people. No, we don't want the world to know this. You see that? Yeah. Those admonitions, however, need to be balanced against clarifying the important connections among seemingly desperate attacks. So it seems on the onset, when you look at pockets of these instances over a period of time, you think it's one-off situations until you look over the decades and you see there's a collective thought process, there's a collective ideology, there's collective groups, neo-Nazis, KKK, Grand Wizards, lodges, secret government institutions. I'll give an example. There was an article that came out about a Black guy that was assaulted by the LAPD. And later on, it was exposed through secondary media, like private media, like social media of YouTube news stations, that these LAPD were involved with a group called the Executioners, who were well-known white supremacists that worked for the government. So now the Bible says your enemy is going to be found a liar. We're seeing an example of this when you have time and time again situations that occur where acts of violence are proven to be caused by Caucasian people, and they say, nope, nothing to see here. Nope. Let's not look into his background. His family was a good family. They have good, morals and good values and all of that stuff. He hung out with his friend and he was shooting guns and stuff, but his friend never thought, and the neighbors, they didn't even think he was violent. So, we don't equate white folks shooting guns with actual violence. No, how could we? Right? So then think about this. It says, among recent years from most remote fringe of right-wing culture into mainstream. Okay. Inspiration included the New Zealand situation. Though the suspect lived in New York, a town of about 50,000 people, 5,000 people near the Pennsylvania border, he claimed he has drawn inspiration like this is a prayer service. he's gotten inspiration, okay? That's what the article is saying. From the Australian man who attacked 2 mosques in the city of Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019, killing 51 people and wounding more. You see that? So this shows you that even back then, right, that Christchurch situation had the same ideology. And what was it? Replacement theory. So now let's read this real quick. Mm-hmm. Replacement theory, a racist conspiracy theory that an unnamed cabal is perpetually seeking to encourage non-white immigration to mostly white countries in an effort to change their demographic makeup. So when they're in fear of white genocide, when they're in fear of being genetically annihilated, what is the process that they're thinking? Karma, guilt, shame. They know that they deserve judgment from God. They know that they deserve judgment from the people. Because how did they come to America? How did they come to Australia? How did they come to Africa?
Right.
With the same thought process that they use to create their system. They wanted to replace all the populations of the earth with themselves. They wanted to mingle themselves, like the Bible says, with the seed of men, like it's written of in the book of Daniel. So watch this. The Buffalo Suspects post, which also focused on a replacement theory, quotes from the screed verbatim several times, copying sections of the reference to white genocide that reveal an obsession with birth rates in the Western world. So you see that? There's a thought process amongst white supremacists. There's a thought process within their ideology where they feel like they're going to be breeded out by Black people, Native Indigenous people, Hispanic people, Latino people. Okay? Is this true? Well, statistically speaking, no, because white people know that Hispanics, Blacks, Native Americans are not a retaliatory group of people. We do not commit acts of violence against other races. We do not. It's not in our nature. Okay? But they said, and remember the Roe versus Wade situation that just got reversed. They said, you will not replace us. You will not replace us. So what are they afraid of? You see what I'm saying? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Right. So I want to pivot before you go down that road, because we've kind of, no, that's a good point. With the replacement theory, definitely cover up, I definitely see that tie in, totally being protected, with his evaluations before. And it's interesting how that wasn't called out. What hopefully will happen is that additional charges will be filed, as they uncover more of his writings, perhaps, or, as they dig deeper into the interviews with the staff. And, they're still going through, I'm sure, lots of evidence and interviews, and it would have to be, worth additional charges, if not for at least for the other people who were wounded in the Buffalo attack. So, and then
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Like you said, the writing alone is enough to be looked at as a hate crime piece, with the manifesto and all of that. So hopefully they'll add additional charges later doesn't matter.
They need
But
to add charges later, and people need to stand up against the state that is not standing against it. The prosecution, if they decide to just convict him just on this murder trial, you're gonna have people that are upset. I'm telling you, you're gonna have people that are upset because they know that that was an act of terrorism. They know now that the online manifest is on the internet. And you know how the internet is. Once it's online, it's not going away. It's not going away.
yeah, I mean, some people have still seen part of the Twitch video, so yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the video. Thank you for mentioning the video. Do you remember in the video that there was a particular situation that happened? I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but in the video, while he was committing his atrocious acts, and there was a part where he discharged his firearm against a black person. He reloaded the weapon, and then he fired again on the black person that was on the ground. But then when he walked and saw a Caucasian male that was saying, please, please don't, no, please, no. He was like, sorry, bro. And he went about his merry way.
I heard about that.
So is there an agenda to commit acts of violence only to a particular group? Because if they try to go the crazy route, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did he stop and apologize to one racial demographic while completely annihilating everyone else?
Right. It's like he's aware of what's going on. He's aware of what's going on, and which just makes it even more disturbing, considering the nature of the events. So, yeah.
This proves, like other episodes, that the Bible is a true book. Remember when we read Zechariah 11 and verse 5, which says, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. You remember that?
Okay, remind us briefly.
Sure, I'll do that. Let's go to that Bible verse real quick. It's Zechariah 11 verse 5, because everything I do, I try to filter it through the scriptures. The Bible says that we are God's chosen people, and that the nation of Esau, or the nation of Edom, which are the Caucasian cultures, have a perpetual hatred. I'll read Ezekiel 35 verse 5 first. Verse 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. Mount Seir is another name for the regions where Caucasians used to live when they were in Northeast Africa. Okay, you'll hear different references to Mount Seir, Edom, Idumea, Petra. The more modern equivalents would be Greek, Rome, European, Euro descendant, American, Australian, British, these racial groups of people, right? So whenever you hear Mount Seir in the Bible, it's talking about white folk, okay? Verse 5, it says this, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel. So now, if the Bible is saying that Caucasian people are the people of Esau, and they're shedding the blood of the children of Israel, who are Caucasian people targeting when they're trying to assassinate people in the Buffalo shooting? Was it their own, or was it what the Bible is saying? The Bible is basically saying that the children of Esau, the Caucasian culture, has a perpetual, meaning forever, hatred, enmity, vitriol, anger, violence, indignation against the children of Israel. And what do they do to portray themselves in that act? They shed innocent blood. Mm-hmm. This is the Bible. We're reading the Bible, and we're correlating the Bible to accurate situations in modern culture. Because most people say, oh, the Bible is a fairy tale, the Bible isn't a real book, but they don't know the characters of the Bible, who is what nation and who is who. They don't know because no one has taught them that. But when you're able to identify the different racial groups and you're saying, hold up, wait a minute. If Mount Seir is a representation of Caucasian people and the children of Israel are Caucasian of Black people, Native Americans, Indigenous Africans, people in the Black diaspora and Latinos, then this is showing you that the Bible is a true book. It's not a fairy tale. It's predicted thousands of years ago, but we call it history. The Bible calls it prophecy. So God says this, because you have a perpetual hatred against my people, and because you go against them with the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. When did our sin have an end? When Christ came on the scene to die for our sins and deliver us out of captivity, out of these nations. Slavery he put to an end. Mass incarceration is going to come to an end. The time of our calamity on this earth is going to come to an end. Watch what God says. Therefore, as I live, this is how you know God is a Black man. He's like, on my life. This is how you know God is a Black man. He said, on my life, therefore, as I live, saith the Lord, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So think about that. God is saying what goes around comes around. God is saying karma is going to come. God is saying whatever you reap, that's what you're going to, whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap.
Okay.
So what are we reading? The Bible. The Bible. So Zechariah, real quick. Zechariah 11, verse 5. Let's find it real quick because it touches on how although they commit these atrocities, they hold themselves not guilty. From the acts of atrocities of slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration to mass shootings, every time Caucasian people are involved with evil, they rarely hold themselves accountable at all. Zechariah 11, verse 5, whose possessors slay them, whose possessors slay them. Who possessed us during slavery? The Caucasian races, the Arab races, the indigenous Africans, the Chinese, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. Trayvon Martin, shot down by a grown adult man. They held him not guilty. And other stories and events that happen in the United States of America where they hold themselves not guilty. And those that sell them, who sold us during slavery, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. America is one of the richest nations on the planet. How did they establish themselves as a rich nation? Through murder, through genocide, through deleting people. And then they build churches, and then they build courthouses, and then they build schools, and then they build parks, recreational. They build Disney World. They build movie theaters for everyone to entertain themselves and say, forget about that stuff. God bless America. So I hope this can give some people a reasoning in their mind to think, hold up, we need to separate ourselves. We need to start homeschooling our children. We need to start investing in external places to go, whether it's the Caribbean islands, whether it's South America, whether it's the continent of Africa, building and networking with the diaspora. Because remember, you mentioned, Jen, about solutions.
Right.
With these atrocities that happen, we have to come up with solutions. We can't keep running around in a circle expecting this nation to save us. It will not happen. Our salvation is within each other and within our God. Consider the Black national anthem. True to our God, true to our native land. That's in the Black National Anthem. But many of us have forgotten that song. That new song has to be restored in our hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. There's one last story I want to get in here. We went a little long, but I do appreciate you sharing that. Definitely good information and great tie ins that I think we can definitely find value in. So it is the second anniversary of the death of George Floyd. So we definitely want to acknowledge that was part of the inspiration for our podcast. So we definitely want to acknowledge George Floyd. And there's a news story significant to the anniversary. President Joe Biden signed a executive order this past week, Wednesday, aimed at reforming policing practices on the second anniversary of the death. So, this particular order will create a national registry of officers fired for misconduct and encourages state and local police to tighten restrictions on chokeholds and no knock warrants, which was related to the George Floyd matter. It also restricts the transfer of military equipment to law enforcement agencies and mandates all federal agents wear activated body cameras. And Biden has been pushing Congress to pass more comprehensive police reform legislation, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So they're still working toward getting the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. It previously had failed, so he's still working on that. So, yeah, definitely want to share that as we approach this second anniversary of George Floyd and want to remember his life and think of his family. I'm actually wearing a T-shirt with George Floyd's face on it, so yep, just want to acknowledge George Floyd t- on today.
Thank you for mentioning
So,
that. And it's very important for us to always
yeah.
remember all the lost lives. And congratulations, Woke by Accident, for consistently reporting on these various things that impact our communities. This Memorial Day, I don't want you to just think about the wars that has happened. I want you to think about the innocents. I want you to memorialize as a listener the people that have been impacted by the atrocities that have occurred since we have dealt with these other nations. And I pray that you can encourage one another, love one another, deal right by each other, give hope and promise to those that are downtrodden, help those that are fatherless, help those that are widows and are single parent mothers and single parent fathers that need a sense of community and they feel alone. So that's my thoughts and prayers for all of our people impacted, especially the family of George Floyd and the recent Buffalo situation.
Definitely appreciate that. And Levi, if you could let us know how people can reach out to you and your podcast.
So I'm Levi, Aphiel Levi, the host of the Forefront Radio. We talk about Black history according to the Bible. And, you notice every time that I come on the show, I always try to reference the scriptures. The Forefront Radio can be found on Spotify, iHeartRadio, anchor.fm/the Forefront. It can also be found on Facebook, on YouTube, and other streaming platforms. I sincerely hope to encourage using the scriptures to restore us back to our African Hebraic roots. We are the lost tribes of Israel according to Bible, according to history, according to archaeology. And the Bible says you will know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. In order to find me on social media, you can find me on the Forefront Express, which is on Instagram. And if you would like to email me, it's the Forefront Black Media at gmail.com. On Facebook, it's the Forefront Media. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of the show.
Definitely. You're welcome here anytime. We definitely love your feedback and thank you for sharing the information today. And let's see. Anything else to share today?
Jesus is black. Ronald Reagan is the devil. And 9/11 is well known to be orchestrated by the government. That's it.
Okay, with that, we thank you guys for listening and take care.